All right, guys. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Results Loading Podcast hosted by Prosperous AI. I'm your host, Michael Atkin, and today I'm very excited to introduce someone with vast experience in managing production and manufacturing plants. Our guest today serves as the Director of Plant Operations at Modlogic Incorporated, where they oversee everything from material procurement and inventory control to streamlining processes and ensuring continuous improvement. So please join me in welcoming Russ Wills as we explore his career, the challenges he's faced, and his approach to building a successful manufacturing operations. So Russ, welcome, man. Thanks so much for agreeing to be on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to this one. And Russ, I want to dive right in here. Can you share the story of how you first got started in the manufacturing industry? What led you to the field? Just kind of take us through how we essentially got here in the first place.
Okay. Yeah, I basically got into manufacturing by mistake. I tried going to college a few times and it just never quite felt right. It always felt like there's something better I could be doing with my time. So in your late teens, 19, 20 years old, it's not a real good way to make a living, make some money. So it was manual labor, it was manufacturing type work. So in researching that, found a couple companies that were hiring and got into it, really jumping in and running with it. So in being in manufacturing, full go manual labor, there's two ways to make more money: no more than the next person and work harder. So that's kind of what I did. And every task, every project I was on, I kept pushing myself to kind of be the best at it that I could be. And it became a fairly quickly road to starting having teams underneath me and people I was managing and leading to kind of get into where I'm at now.
So when you started to realize like, hey, I'm not the college type, but if I work harder and I know more than the guy next to me, when did you realize that, and when did you really start to see the results come from implementing that kind of mindset?
It was really quick. I grew up playing a lot of sports. I grew up, even in our neighborhood, snow days from school, I didn't sleep in. I was out shoveling people's driveways for money, hitting up the neighbors. Hey, I'll shovel your driveway. Give me whatever you think's fair, that kind of thing. So it was always one of those, if you outwork the guy next to you, you're going to get the playing time. You're going to be the one that gets to do the things that everybody else wants to. So it really didn't take long for that to turn over and really show itself in real life application.
And then in terms of knowing more than the next guy, even though you were still pretty green at the beginning of your career, how did that come to be? I mean, you and I, before we hit record here, just talked about how you're the first guy in the office. Typically, you get moved on by the time most hit their morning break. So where did this mindset and application come in terms of, even when, like I was saying, you're still pretty green, how can you possibly know more than the next guy if you're still 19, 20 years old?
Yeah, at that time, 2+ decades ago, it was one of those things where I never want to be the person that said, I don't know. I never want to be the guy that didn't have an answer. So when we're doing something, to figure out what you're doing, it's the hows and the whys. At that time, internet was there, but it wasn't just something in your pocket on your cell phone, right? You didn't have those abilities. So it was more of looking at the product labels, understanding what you're working with, and then going and doing research on it at night, making phone calls, talk to people who know, and really learning. If you're doing something worth doing, you should be learning it at the same time. So learn it once to do it, learn it twice to know it forever. So it's really kind of building on those principles.
Well, then obviously, then you start teaching other people, then you really start to learn a whole new realm of leadership and skill at that point, right? Which is, if I'm not mistaken, what happened to you. You climbed the ladder pretty quickly and found yourself in a leadership role not long after you got into the industry, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was kind of, I wouldn't say organically, but when you're the guy that they can count on, when you're the person that is willing to go the extra mile, when they need a project to get done, that's the people they talk to. So, every couple of years is another step to where I'm at now.
So take me back to that time. What were we working on? What were you doing? And what company was that for, if you are able to say?
So yeah, absolutely. So the first real big one, it was a company called Plastic Coat. They made a lot of spray paints, and at that time, spray paint, implement paint, we made stuff for Caterpillar, John Deere. The show Pimp My Ride was on MTV, so the House of Color brand was all listed under Valspar, who was the parent company. So in that world, there's two shifts, and they probably had 130, 150 employees. I came in there as a temp, and not known at the time, it was I wasn't a super strong union, but it was union, and your duties, your obligations all depended on your union classification and your code. So going in and learning different things, I was able to learn a lot of different projects, a lot of different job classifications. So when it came time for bumping, my first year there, 6-7 months in, I was able to bump people who were there 8 to 10 years because I had different job classifications that they did not. So that right there kind of really led it. And then getting into the distribution center, being a lead, and learning more about the entire operation and not just that single piece workflow that you're doing really kind of created a broader world. From there, I went to a place called BEST. It was Bulk Equipment Systems Technologies. And I went in there kind of leading their shipping and receiving department. And within a couple months, working with the lead technicians. Now, this is going back to the early 2000s. I want to say it's 04, 05 when I was there. That's when it started. Learning a lot of how the machines got put together, how they got bolted together, different tools, why we use certain tools, why we use certain equipment when you're dealing with food grade equipment versus batch system equipment, just all of those types of things. And in 2007, Metso Minerals bought out BEST for a lot of the metal recycling and metal transition equipment, shears, shredders, sorters, things like that, a lot of electric vibe tables that we were building. So with Metso is when I really kind of got that first break. They wanted to build a large rotor and shredder line based out of our Medina, Ohio facility. And I was handpicked to be one of the people to learn it. And within 6 months of being out there, they put me in charge of running the whole plant. So I ran that facility for, I think, 3 or 4 years after that. And it was just basically working hard, being the first ones there, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, there for a couple hours. I already feel like you've done a full day's worth of work and really producing and getting better numbers. We took, the rotor building process, which is typically anywhere between 2 to 4 guys an entire week from the start to the end with the weldments, with the heat fit and everything. We were doing it with 3 guys in 2 days. So kind of learning how it gets built, breaking it down, finding the right way and better way to do it. And at the biggest time, doing it within quality specs and doing it safely is really what pushed it. And they were able to see it. The main office was down in Texas. They were able to see it and made the change fairly quickly.
So you're the guy who comes in and just starts cooking right away. I mean, it sounds like you really transformed the efficiency and productivity levels that they were used to. And that's just something that comes with the Russ Wills package, it seems like. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, I believe there's always a better way to do it, right? You look at anything, just because we've done it, one of the biggest things I hate is that's the way we've always done it. If you say that, I know you're losing money and you're losing labor and you're probably doing some things unsafely.
Sure. Well, taking shortcuts and being stagnant, it's like, the status quo is working for us and the easiest thing to do is just nothing. And
exactly.
Like, instead of going through a pain, if there's a digital transformation or a, progress change or whatever like that, a process change, I'm sorry, that's been working for them. And maybe there's a new way and it's going to take a few months to onboard and implement and get everyone on the same page.
Absolutely.
Investing in the future sometimes is difficult short term, but long term you're better off. And a lot of companies just say, screw it.
Right.
What we're doing now is the easiest way to do it, and it's easier to just do nothing. So therefore, we will do nothing and just be stagnant forever. Exactly. I love that you come in and say, no, that's not under my watch. That's not how things are going to go. And obviously, You've seen the result from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Russ, what about challenges? Some of the early challenges you faced as you transitioned to leadership roles. How did you overcome some of those challenges, if there were any at all? And I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming there were a few, especially at the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the beginning, there were a handful. I was, even at Metso, I was in my mid to late 20s. And there's guys who've been welding, been doing that work for 30, 40 years. They've been doing it longer than I've been alive. Now, I'm a guy that's coming in and telling them, no, we're not doing it this way. This is how we're going to do it. It was met with a significant amount of resistance. But also in that same respect, I'm the lead by example. Just because, I've got a title behind my name doesn't mean that I'm not doing the work with them. I was, especially at that time, first one in, last one to leave, getting everything going, doing a lot of the setup work that people didn't want to do so that they can get in and do the job and be as effective as possible in doing it. Many late nights, there's a handful of times that we had projects that need to be done in a very short timeline, and we're there overnight one time to get a project done, get it out, different things like that. And the guys who wanted to be there, wanted to be part of the team, wanted to help build that culture, they changed their mind pretty quick and said, hey, instead of being the guy who leaves and tells us to do the work, I'm working with the guy who's telling us to do the work, but he's the first one to do the work too. So there was definitely some resistance and some holdups in there. And the guys who didn't want to make that change, who thought that because they've been welding or they've been a machine processor for 15, 20 years, they're too good to sweep the floor after them. They weren't around much longer. They found somewhere else to work.
Yeah, I hear similar stories of that here on the Results Loading podcast, specifically guys like yourself climbing the ladder, coming in and taking the reins, and then they're inheriting employees and workers who have, like you said, have been doing in the industry longer than you've been alive, for example, and want nothing to do with any of your insider guidance. And even if you're there, like you said, sweeping the floor with them, it's either get on the ship or find a new ship kind of thing.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's just the reality of the situation. And they put you in charge for a reason. That's great that they've been welders for 35 years, but
Right.
there's a reason why there's organizational structure, and they pick guys like you to come in and really get things moving, if you will. And that's kind of a testament to your whole professional style, if you will, thus far in the last 5-10 minutes we've been chatting. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly right.
So with that being said, I mean, you've held several roles in plant ops and leadership across various companies, as we've been discussing. How did those experiences really shape your approach to managing production and manufacturing processes today?
Yeah. So I guess the best way to answer it, there's a few ways. Being one of the guys that were on the floor, that were hands-on working and do it, you understand what it takes to do the job. So when somebody's doing something that's not the funnest work or could be a little bit dangerous, you understand what that person's going through in that moment. You can use your own experience because you know what it takes to do it. You know how long it should take. It's not somebody who has a piece of paper that says, oh, this should take 25 minutes to do. Well, in a perfect world, when it's set up right, yeah, maybe. But so being someone who's been hands-on and done it, worked in a numerous, I guess, array of fields, from high output manufacturing, like almost like piece assembly work, to one-off custom places, to building full finished modular apartments. Is, you learn a lot. You're always learning, you're always seeing things. So being able to know what that end product should look like and translate it or make a relationship between what you're doing in the moment and knowing what information you need to get out of it, knowing what data to collect so that you can use that for future years, and knowing really what it takes at the end of the day to get the job done. That's probably the biggest thing, that in doing all those different things, it comes with a certain level of experience and maturity to put that information together, to use what you learned somewhere and take it somewhere else and be able to transition that success farther.
So an element of being able to relate to the guys underneath you, for example, because
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The respect is something that's, it's always one of those earned, not given kind of deals. And you have to have a certain level of respect for somebody when they walk through the door to do the work. But when they're willing to go the extra mile and do it, and when they know that you've been that guy doing it before, it's a lot easier to break that wall down. So there's not a real strong us versus them culture.
So it helped with the respect situation as well.
Oh, absolutely.
In which obviously naturally translates into a good leadership situation, good manager and employee relationship, etc., which obviously leads to best possible results, as opposed to having a third of the group being resistant towards you because they're like, oh, like, screw the establishment. We don't want to do it.
Right. Exactly. And I think that the big thing in that too is when you have people that care about their work, that's the first step. When they care about what they're doing, take pride in it, it definitely helps. But then when you care about the people you're doing the work with and you don't want to let those people down, you start building a culture and a team that really can't be beat. It comes down to how much you're able to give and what you're willing to do to get the job done.
And so that kind of leads me into my next question, Russ, if you will. I mean, it sounds like you were kind of just wired this way, to have this natural leadership style and understanding of how to get people to react in a positive way in the workplace. Is this just how you were born and how you were wired? And you, like you mentioned, you just have understood this from a young age, or were there mentors or influential figures who helped kind of get you to this point or put you on this path to have such a solid and well-rounded understanding of how to relate to people, especially within an organizational structure where you may be leading? I mean, did you get this way all on your own, or were there influences who helped get you to this point that obviously set you on the right path? Obviously, it's working pretty well.
Right. Yeah. No, obviously, there's coaches throughout, playing sports and doing things. My parents Although at the time I didn't understand it, or I had my own opinions on how we were raised or how certain things happened. It was one of those, you know, fairly iron fisted to do it the way I said to do it because that's the way it is. A lot of that kind of set that work ethic in. We had things we had to do, and we got home, there was chores or pulling weeds or doing whatever around the house that we had to have done, especially in the summer when we weren't in school. We're there all day. If we were outside playing all day, that's one thing, but we got to get the work done too. So that was there. I did have one boss too, and that was at Best. He was the manufacturing supervisor. Anytime there was kind of a job that nobody wanted, whether it was a little more dangerous or there wasn't a big level of success to be had in that project, he always told people, I have an opportunity for you. I have an opportunity for you. Well, I was one of those people that was never afraid of that opportunity because most people didn't want it. So if you got in and you were able to do the job and do it successfully, you were a hero and you were applauded for it. You got those extra bonuses, you got the rewards, you got that. If you got in and just did an okay job, which in my opinion still isn't good enough, but if you did all right, that's what was to be expected. They weren't expecting anybody to kill it. So if you went in and really did a good job and made things happen, it was over and above. So it kind of became one of those, anytime he was like, hey, I've got an opportunity, I was like, all right, let's go. Let's make it happen. What do we need to do?
Opportunity to shine.
Exactly.
And
absolutely.
How you climb that professional ladder, which obviously you've demonstrated time and time again, apparently.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things, and people use it as a moniker or a thing, but you don't grow when you're comfortable. If you're doing everything, you're showing up every day just doing the same old thing, you don't really grow. You don't get better. You have to get uncomfortable in order to grow. So having those projects that aren't necessarily the best ones, or you don't know what to expect, is really what kind of pushes it. And if you can get to a point where you kind of get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're really setting the tone for everybody else to follow.
Yeah, not only that, but you're setting the table for you to be maximizing your potential and maximizing your ceiling, because you've now put yourself in a position where you're comfortable taking on the uncomfortable task and you're almost numb to it. It's like, yeah, I have no idea. I'm going to do my absolute best to kick ass every day and get this done.
Right.
But at least I'm the one always raising my hand when they're asking for volunteers to take on this new project that no one else wants. And I'm a lot more educated than my peers now because I've taken on the last 10, and I've grown a lot faster than anyone else because I'm going above and beyond to even put myself in a position to learn something new and go and implement that and show that I can actually understand what my ceiling really is. You would never know if you didn't take on stuff. You would never know if you didn't take on stuff that you did or didn't know you could go and accomplish. Essentially, you don't know what you don't know until you try.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And so, Russ, we've talked about your approach to leadership style, or your approach to leadership, but how did your leadership style evolve as you moved through these different roles in different industries, would you say?
Yeah. I'd say all in all, the essence of it hasn't really changed. It's always been that lead by example, be ready, be the first one in, make it happen. But the actual context of it has changed, from back 15, 20 years ago, where it was be the first one in, you're the first one getting sweaty, dirty, bloody, whatever it takes to get the job done. You're in there doing that. Now, fast forward to now, I'm not the first one getting dirty and things. There's too much behind the scenes stuff, too much on the computer. There's days I might spend 8 or 10 hours in meetings all day just to make things happen. So it's more you take that same lead by example, but you're setting up all the work. You're making sure that the guys doing the physical side of it have all the information they need. They have the tools they need. They have any equipment and any, the fasteners, the right, materials, all that's there. And then from that, setting up the projects from an internal standpoint to where you can gauge where it's going. How are we on budget with all of the materials? How are we on budget with labor? Are the proper QC being done? Is everybody doing it in a safe manner? It turns into more of a, how do I make other people successful to be able to follow in what I've started?
And would you say that's been one of the most pivotal aha moments, having those realizations and understanding what is essentially going to get the job done now that you're in the role that you're in currently?
Yeah, that's definitely there, kind of learning how to transition the skill set and transition the things you've learned and what you do to be able to do it on a bigger scale to reach more people. That's definitely been there. There's a few others, and just in managing people and how to manage people, we've all made our mistakes when we're younger, first getting into leadership and managing. There's times where it's like, I treat everybody the same. You have to get this done. You have to do this. And some people responded well and some didn't. you got to understand that there's a lot of different people, especially in this day and age. We've got 4 or 5 decades of ages of people in the workforce right now. Some people respond very well by telling them that their work wasn't good enough and they need to do better. Other people, start getting teary-eyed and quit at lunchtime. It's just the perspective of management has changed greatly, even in just the last 20 years, to where every approach, every single person, different personality types, different generations, it's all a little bit different. And that's probably been the biggest one over my time, is knowing the right way to approach a situation based on the people that are there.
Interesting. And that doesn't even necessarily mean that you hired all of these people. I mean, you've inherited some of these people, and then it becomes your responsibility to understand them and then figure out the best way to communicate to them to obviously maximize their potential.
Right. And even when you do hire, there's people I've hired that have come in and busted their rear ends. And when everything's good, it's like any sports team. When you're winning, the little small things don't matter. The moment you lose or you don't do what someone expects you to do, now everybody's pointing the finger at each other. Everyone's blaming somebody else. The coach is on the hot seat. All those things happen. It's the same thing in the workforce. When things are good and they're learning and there's not that level of commitment isn't quite there yet because they're not standing on their own 2 feet, it changes once they are. And that person has to be ultimately accountable, not just for their work, but for the people around them. Their tone changes a little bit, things get stressed a little bit, and you don't know how someone's going to react until you're in that situation. So yeah, there's people I've hired that I thought were great until, they weren't. And then you got to figure out, how do I get this back on track? What can we do? And, I do monthly one-on-ones with everybody. Sometimes it's scheduled, sometimes it's kind of in passing, and we just talk. I get to know the guys, get to know their why, for lack of a better term. What are they doing here? Why are they spending 8 to 10 hours here and seeing us more than they see their family every single day? So understanding what they work for, what their big goal is, what are they into? What do they do when they're not at work? Is it kids? Is it family? Some people don't have that, but they take care of other family members or friends of family. There's a lot of different reasons why people do what they do. And it's almost impossible to manage people properly without knowing them personally.
No, it's a great point. And some of the best managers I've had, obviously, there's a line and you don't want to be their best friend, but you definitely want to have a great relationship with them, a great working relationship with them. And some of the best managers I've had have nailed that in terms of, look, I'm not going to micromanage you at all, but if you need me, I'm here. Come to me with anything. If you have to work from home one day, that's completely fine. We're human. And just, I feel like I hear stories about other managers who treat it more like a dictatorship.
Right.
And it's very much this condescending, like, I own you and you have to do whatever I say. And it's like people quit jobs because of their managers, not because of their roles or because of the work. And the managers really set the tone and really set the environment set up the environment and set up the culture, which is so important, because if you enjoy going to work every day, you're going to be your best possible self and maximize your capabilities and your potential, as opposed to if you're worried you're going to get yelled at or screamed at or talked down to every day, then there's no way you're getting the most out of yourself, because your mind is going to be so many other places, so concerned with what ifs, what am I going to get screamed at today? What am I going to get wrong at X, Y, and Z, which unfortunately those managers do exist. But with the situations like you are taking the time to just, let's talk about something that's not work. How's everything going? Why are you here?
Right.
What are your goals? Having that relationship with those who work, underneath you, get the most out of your employees and maximize that efficiency, right? I mean, it seems simple, but it's surprising how sometimes rare it can be. Depending on
And that personal touch is so underestimated. That you look at any major company, the employees, the people, that's the resource that matters. You have equipment, you have machinery, but if you have nobody there to run it or operate it, or they're not dependable, your company's not going to be successful, and you're not going to be able to take care of people the way you want to. So, being able to have those people and know who they are, you see them literally. I see the guys here more than I see my own family typically. So, you've got to be able to get along. And not only that, when they're in a better mood, the people next to them and that they're working with in a better mood, and it shows in the work. When we have delivery drivers or truckers coming in to pick things up, and everyone's like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? This and that. They can have a conversation with them instead of just like, head down, being angry, you know, slamming on the horn on the tow motor. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to be involved in that. So when you make an environment where people can be people and they still get their job done, it's always going to be there. And then, you know, at the back end, the company gets more out of it. You know, like there's the saying of a well-respected, well-trusted employee will always go above and beyond than, you know, someone who doesn't. And it's a very real thing. When we go through big hiring times, and I'll do tours and bring people through, I might bring 15 or 20 people through and pick 2 or 3 of them to come in and work. And I tell everybody in there, if you're just here for a paycheck, if you just want to come here so you get that piece of paper on Friday, I don't need you here. I don't want you here. If you're here for the work and to actually build something and better yourself, then you've got a shot.
Exactly. No, and it's a great point, and those people do exist, but also there are people out there who have the skill set, who have the resume, who are just showing up for the paycheck. They want to do the bare minimum, get in, get out, and that's it. I mean, that, you know, those people will be gone in 6 months to a year anyway, typically, and we want to find employees who are going to be here for the long haul like you, and want to actually commit to being a great employee, to learn and to grow within a company, obviously.
Yep. You're exactly right.
So with the case of Modlogic, which is where you're working now as the director of plant operations, what does your day-to-day look like? Can you just give us a brief breakdown of what Modlogic does and what your day-to-days are looking like these days now that you're at this point in your career?
Yep. So as much as I try to plan out my days, I might have 30 or 50 things lined up on my notebook or in my OneNote on Microsoft, you know, as my priority list for the day or the next couple of days. It always changes. My main priority are the employees, you know, making sure that they have what they need to be able to do their job. Because if they can't do their jobs, then we're all failing there. All in all, from the start of my day, going through reviewing time clocks, reviewing hours, reviewing materials, those kind of things. And then it gets into whatever the hot topic is at that moment. It could be pre-con, could be assisting with sales, could be scheduling, could be planning for sites. We've got a project that's going on with a big box retailer, adding an online retail pickup area. It's like a 6,000 square foot basic building added onto the side of their building. We've got that in production right now. Next week, I'm taking my internal team out to the site to help with the install, to get the install going, which typically we have install partners that do it, but this is the first one for this customer, which we're planning to turn into a program-based sale. So there could be, this retailer has almost 5,000 stores nationwide. So if they start doing this, there's a lot of business there. So I'm taking my guys out there so they understand how it all goes together, and they can really hone in on the smaller things, which may not be a defect, may never show up on QC or QA, but it's going to be one of those things that's going to show up when someone else is installing. So they need to learn that. So right now, a lot of my time is getting everything set up, all the tools, all the equipment, the different pieces, setting up hotel rooms, getting all that stuff ready to go so that when we get out on site, it's there. Outside of that, there's site verifications, owner, architect, contractor, client meetings, logistics, really anything that comes in, you know, purchasing, anything that comes in, vetting out materials, vetting out projects, see if we want to dedicate resources and time to them. Anything that goes into running the plant it comes up at any time, you know, it's all in a day's work, so to speak.
Absolutely. In Modlogic, keep me honest here, is mainly a manufacturing plant. You guys are manufacturing what again?
Yes. So we've got 2 plants, one in New Holland, PA, and the one that I oversee in Seville, Ohio. The one in New Holland, PA is a full finished modular builder. They just did the largest permanent modular hospital in North America. It's in Athens, Ohio. So they take on a lot of the things in healthcare and education. They've done modular schools, and we're talking 100,000 square foot plus in size. They're big, full finished buildings. Us in Seville, we've got 5 roll formers. So we do offsite construction. We do modular as well, but we really focus on light gauge steel and a lot of the prefab. We'll do panels pre-finished. Like we're doing a project with pre-finished EIFs on the exterior. We'll pre-install windows and flash everything for weatherproofing. We do some modular work, whether it's full finished modular in student housing and multifamily, or we also do the structural shells. So you can have your building kind of set up and then bring your trades through one by one to go. So we are full finished modular construction and offsite prefab.
Fantastic. Goes perfect with your come up. Obviously, it sounds like something that's way up your alley and a perfect fit, if you will. Russ, what about technology and innovation? Obviously, you just went through. You guys have a lot going on. You guys are doing pretty major projects. I mean, as the director of plant operations, I mean, what role does tech play in the operations for you? And Are there any innovations or tools that you've implemented to optimize processes or improve productivity? I know it's not 20 years ago. Times are changing quickly.
Yep.
You know, tech is making waves seemingly every week at this point. How are you guys optimizing and utilizing, you know, what's available at this point, given all that you have going on the day to day?
Yep, absolutely. So there's a few avenues that tech really plays into. On the manufacturing floor, there's a lot of automation that's happening. I still believe in people. So we have some automation. There's some things there. Like I said, we have roll formers. So we take raw coil, run it through from our 3D plans. All of our model and design team use Revit. So we do 3D models with everything. Every project we do, there's a 3D model that spits out the code to run our CSV codes for our roll form machines. So we make and produce all of our own studs and track and materials to build these buildings. So there's some automation in there. There's a lot of companies that are talking with, you know, doing all kinds of different robot things, from welding, cutting, running screw guns, cutting all your drywall, setting your drywall, mudding and finishing drywall, doing site layouts. There's a lot there. I think in the future that will hold a bigger role. But right now, there's just not enough proof in there, in my opinion. And the cost of them it's a big cost to take on that ROI. So on the office side, obviously, you know, all of the design software and everything that we use is huge. One of the big ones that have come in more recently is the use of AI, and not just in figuring out, helping with estimates and doing takeoffs, doing some preliminary pricing and things like that. But they can also go out, different AI programs can go out and help find projects to bid on and find resources to use them. So that's really cool. Another one that we started using, and it's been touch and go depending on how busy we are, is we've gotten into the AR world, and we've integrated our building models into AR with the Microsoft HoloLens. So we can actually create like the hologram of an entire building, which is really cool. And you can walk through it with the HoloLens on and see where every wall is. Our designers have implemented, they've put full kitchen build out. So you see the cabinets, the appliances, you know, everything you need. You can lay out entire rooms in full scale size or in just view size. So you can walk through an entire building. And there's so many things for the future that will weigh into.
Yeah, I used to work for Microsoft. I used to sell HoloLens. Those are really, really cool. And I know at the time, I mean, they can really be used for anything, obviously, in the AR world, but obviously see huge upside, huge potential in your industry for something like that, and the 3D modeling and having a good understanding of what the building is going to look like before it's even built. Like revolutionary, I'd imagine, especially for, you know.
Oh, absolutely. The whole thing with offsite and prefab is to solve problems that come up on site before they come up. So you have to do all your modeling, you have to do all your detailing before you even start building. So a lot of those issues of what would typically happen is an HVAC guy or an MEP guy would come in and be like, hey, I need to run my ductwork here. I'm cutting the stud out. Well, you just cut two structural members out of a building that's holding that wing of the building up just to run your ductwork through. So a lot of those things that happen on site kind of go away with the use of it. And then being able to do full clash detection, whether it's on screen or in a HoloLens setting, is, you know, it's game changing completely.
And are you the one actually going and getting in there and taking a look at that stuff, or are there other teams within Modlogic who are mainly responsible for mapping that out and understanding what problems may lay ahead before they actually happen?
Yeah, so we have a full design team that goes in and takes a look at it. Chris Bruning's one of them that is really well versed in the HoloLens and a lot of the activities. But once we have it to hologram state, I've absolutely had the helmet on, you know, walking through, taking a look at everything. When we were doing a lot of tours, when we had a few different projects that were lined up, we're bringing people through and letting them. We had a demo unit that was set up that was just a structural skeleton with nothing inside of it. And it was completely finished out with the HoloLens goggles on. So they would put the goggles on and walk into this unit and they see where the walls are. And it's usually pretty cool. It's an opaque lens, so you can see through it, but it's also hologrammed. So when you're going through, you can see where walls are. You see where the toilet is and everything. It's really pretty cool. It's, you know, it's full, I guess, full view on what the end product would be.
And can you like explain a little bit more? You talked about risk assessment and alleviating risk before it happens. Can you explain a little bit deeper how, by utilizing the AI, the AR, the HoloLens, like, can you provide an example of what that would look like versus maybe 20 years ago when we didn't have access to this kind of technology to identify potential hiccups when going in and building? How is that changing the way you guys are doing business now and planning before getting in there in a, several multi-million dollar project and then running into a huge roadblock? I mean, how is technology helping you alleviate some of those risks and issues right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So 20 years ago, there was very little coordination that was actually being done. And even just in your structural model to your architectural model, right? And then when you add in every level of MEP, typically those drawings were intent drawings. We intend for a pipe to run here. But if there's a structural column in the way, guess what? They're changing it on the fly and they're just doing whatever they think fits in that moment.
Right.
Now, there's other softwares, Navisworks, and there's other things that you can use for clash detection. But when you load all these models into the HoloLens, you can literally physically walk through the building all in hologram and see every single instance where there could be an issue. Anywhere where you run the clash detection before in the model before it goes to HoloLens, it can automatically highlight red. So you will see it. It will stand out like a sore thumb that there's an issue there. Now, I'm sure everybody has always said it could be something as simple as people painting a room in their house. Oh, if I knew it was going to look like that, I would have never done it. Well, now you're kind of getting some of that view. You're able to visualize and actually see on screen or in the goggles what that's going to look like and how some of the pieces come together. We've invented certain pieces and have created pieces from our roll formers that we use in a lot of our builds. Well, when you're explaining it over a call or show a picture of it, they don't necessarily always get it. So a way to be able to show that in person and as the hologram, they're able to really picture how it goes together because they're seeing a live piece of it. They're seeing the demonstration. So they understand more in some of the structural connections within a building.
That's incredible. I mean, especially when we're talking multi-million dollar project, I mean, the example that you just gave is perfect. It's like, well, if I knew that the paint was going to look like this on my office wall, I wouldn't have ever done it. But now, I mean, obviously with what you're doing, we're talking much more complex and high level. Right. But being able to visualize that and see that now that the technology exists has to be just such a game changer for the entire industry in terms of planning and alleviating risk and therefore saving probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in costs every year for unplanned issues and stuff that you run into, which is normal for a big project like that. But giving yourself a chance to alleviate some of those issues now is revolutionary. Like I said.
It's huge. It's like what building a mock-up was then, you can actually do now without having to spend the time and the resources and effort to build a mock-up. So you can be exactly sure. So when you go build your mock-up, it is an exact representation of what it should be.
Of what you thought it was going to look like.
Yeah. Exactly. And moving forward, there's so many things that this will work into. I'm planning on being able to use it as part of our QA and QC program. I'm looking at using it for the tradesmen that are doing the work. We have the hologram in, and they're going to put pipe hangers or they're going to install, it could be studs into the wall. The hologram will actually light up green or get highlighted once that piece is installed in there, so it's in the right spot. When they do QA, QC checks, they'll walk into the room and they'll be able to scan the entire room and know where it's at. Then one of the things that we want to push on or want to be able to do is it'll serve as your as-built drawings. So once it goes to, let's call it an apartment complex. I think everybody at some point or another was living in an apartment where, someone's plumbing failed and it starts to, or a hotel where part of a wing of the unit starts flooding and it's going down. Typically, they would start doing demo, knocking open walls, not knowing exactly where the plumbing is or where the fittings are, or where the shutoff is. Well, you put on that HoloLens, you know exactly where everything's at. And as long as you have QR codes and scanners per floor to where it can basically triangulate where everything is, you can see it's like 3D vision, seeing into the wall. You see where your electrical wiring's going. You see where your plumbing's at. So if they know it's leaking out of the fitting from the second floor to the first floor, they can knock a hole in the ceiling exactly where that's at, fix the problem, and patch it back up without destroying a whole section of wall. Exactly. That's exactly it.
That's fantastic. And Russ, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of backtrack a little bit in terms of fostering resiliency, not just within your day-to-day, but within your team. Mm-hmm. How are you guys doing that in fostering resiliency and adaptability within your team when faced with unexpected issues like what we just discussed, or in production or supply chain? Obviously, your team probably aren't the ones wearing the HoloLens, but right. How are you fostering or promoting resilience when things aren't kind of going your way, or you guys are running into roadblocks? Yeah,
so we definitely run into this. I think the only constant on any project we get into is that there will be some change at some point. That's kind of, that goes hand in hand with what we do. A lot of pre-planning really goes a long way. COVID taught us a lot with supply chain and labor markets and everything. Now you just don't need a backup. You need a backup to your backup. Things have gotten better with supply chain and availability of products and things. So that's kind of leveled stuff out. But, you know, we have a number of guys with decent amount of experience out on the floor that are expecting the next thing. We've kind of been classically trained by doing it, that where can the mistakes happen? What can we really try to work out in front of it? And when something does happen, it's about getting together and figuring out the solution for it. You know, a lot of people, something happens and then they just want to be reactive and start solving for things right away, where they don't necessarily understand what the main root is. You know, they're solving for a symptom and not the actual root cause of the problem. So we like to get together and really solve for what it is. And then we can be agile enough, because a lot of our guys on the floor, my QC guy was a framer, that was a site carpenter, that was a pole barn builder. You know, my main guy that I mentioned earlier on design, Chris Bruning, he was a framer. He framed for 15 years before he got into the design side of it. So a lot of these guys really understand the hows and whys of how things go together. So when something comes up, even, you know, we're doing a 7-story building where the 7th story was supposed to be kind of meeting lounge and rooms and a restaurant. Well, the owner decided to put a pickleball court and a dance floor on the 7th story as we were building prefab through 4 floors already. So how do you solve for that? Well, everything's got to stop. Go back to engineering, and we engineered a solution, found a way to add, I think it was like 20 tons of red iron steel back into the design after the first 4 stories were already built on the 7-story building and on site. Yes. Get that steel into the building without disrupting anything else, and then get back on track. And I think the whole entire process only cost us 2 weeks.
You're kidding.
And no, dead serious. And he was able to do it. So being able to shift and change and be agile is part of what we do. You know, we're out so far in front when we're expecting architects to call out doors and windows and things like that, so we can get our rough openings and our connection details set 12 months before a project starting. We're asking a lot out of people, and that's kind of the level of detail we go into. So we have to build a certain level of comfort into it before we get to that point.
So agility and collaboration.
Absolutely.
Simple as that. And a hell of a lot of planning. Backups, the backups, the backups, agility, planning, being okay with it, done.
Absolutely.
Got it. Love that. I mean, that's crazy that you got 4 floors done already. And he's like, actually, pickleball, which I can't imagine is light. I mean, that's a huge engineering situation for them. It's not like just, I don't know. I can't even think of a different, but it's not like a pickleball court is nothing. You know, it's like not as heavy as a swimming pool, but it's not that's a lot of concrete that they weren't planning on having up there.
And it's open and clear span. So, you know, when we're looking at beam pockets every 20 feet, 22 feet for our trusses, now they're expanding that to a 40-foot open space. So, yeah, a lot of loads going back down to the foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. And Russ, as we're starting to wrap up here, what trends or advancements are we seeing shaping the future of the manufacturing industry, particularly in your neck of the woods and plant operations? Where do you see this going? You know what it looked like 20 years ago. What about the next 20 years? What are you thinking?
So I really think there's going to be more automation coming in. Obviously, AI is doing more and more. I am a big believer that AI is going to be able to identify projects based on your key input, but it'll be able to identify projects, run a takeoff, run an estimate, and send it out while we're all sleeping overnight. You'll wake up, instead of getting like requests for bids and contacts in your email box, you're just going to get completed projects like ready to go in there. I really believe that that's kind of one of the strong suits it's going to. Also on the production floor with automation, there's so many companies out there that are really pushing to that. There's layout robots. Like 10 years ago when the Total Station came out, and everyone's like, holy crap, like you can put your design into this spinning laser box and it's going to show you all your points on a grid. Like that was huge and a game changer. But having Dusty Robots named one of them, but it has ink. You load all the plans in it and it just runs around on the floor like a little Roomba vacuum, and it actually marks out and inks out where wall panels go, where everything, any of your connection points, basically anything you put into it. It can mark out all your hold downs. It can mark out your furniture, anything you want in a room or a unit on a slab, it'll get into. The more the program, the software people learn about how the manufacturing and the operations are being done, the more they're able to advance that. And I really think that's kind of where it's going. Not only that, what we're seeing now from the amount of people into cybersecurity and things like that, all those jobs that are being created from that, we're going to see on the backside for these robots. A lot of tradesmen, so to speak, that are leaving the field. I think there's 6 people retiring for every one that's getting in right now, is an astonishing number. There's a lot of people saying there ain't no robot taking my job, that kind of thing. But when you look at it, there will be machinery and equipment doing a lot of the work that humans once did. It's already happening in automobile manufacturing. There's tons of people, tons of different companies using it. But what we have to remember is there's going to be all these manufacturing plants of building these robots, of wiring these robots, of creating the programming. You're going to have salesmen out there selling these robots. You're going to have, the implementation people, the people going out to these jobs to set them up properly, to make sure that they're programmed properly, that they do what they say they're supposed to do. So even though on the surface it looks like these things are taking jobs, on the backside it's creating some as well. So
absolutely, Russ. And last question here before we wrap up. You've obviously had an illustrious career. You seem to just kind of get it since you were a kid, and you've carried a lot of those values with you into the professional world, which has had a direct correlation to the success that you've seen. Not saying that it's been perfect, rainbows and unicorns the whole time for you, which, as we discussed, it hasn't been. There are obviously always challenges, but you seem to be in complete control and have a good grasp as to how to get things done and how your management style has led to success across all the companies you've worked for. Looking back, are there any decisions or paths that you wish you had taken differently throughout your career, or are you pretty content with this path that you've been on and obviously it's led you to this point?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I necessarily have any regrets. I think every decision I've made, the decision to leave school, the decision to go back, the decision to leave again, those kind of things, it put me on the path to where I'm at now. It made me realize and understand that there is no substitution for hard work.
Right.
You have to get out there, you have to earn it, and you have to do it. It's some of those decisions have humbled me at times. It's made me take a step back and kind of realize, what am I doing? Where is my path leading me? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? But I think all in all, I really wouldn't change, what it is. It got me to think the way I do, and it's got me to the point that I am now, and wherever it takes me, that's kind of where I'm heading. So yeah, I don't feel I have any regrets or would change anything along my path.
Excellent. Well, you've obviously set the table correctly for you, and you've rode the horse through the career really, really nicely, obviously, and plenty of career left for you to continue to do fantastic things, whether it's, maximizing productivity, being a great mentor, being a great manager, and a great leader. Obviously, you figured this all out, and it's led to a lot of success, and that's why we love having people like you on the podcast to hear those kinds of stories and understand why it's worked for you, and hopefully those listening can take a piece or two of advice from you and implement it into the way they're doing business and see some more success. So thank you so much for sharing that, and really appreciate the insights you provided. I'm thrilled for you and wish you the best of luck, and congrats on the success you've had so far, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, likewise, man. Maybe we'll check in with you in about a year and see what new stories you have for us or new approaches you've discovered over the year. But thanks again. I've really enjoyed this one, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.